YouTube video. The Facebook one's not started. Let me start it real quick.
So I'm on the air.
You're on live on YouTube.
I'm on live. I'm
On
live
YouTube.
on YouTube.
Yes.
Hi. Well, things do happen.
Yeah. I accidentally hit the button.
Yeah. Well, I could go ahead and start. You could just
I can start this and
start that in the middle of it.
I'm gonna start it right now, and I'll put all the details in on my laptop.
Okay. Well, welcome to our Monday night study. Should the early church, should they have continued keeping the holy days? Passover is coming up. Did they keep that? Is there any historical evidence? I want to read to you, not from the Bible, because people interpret the Bible differently, but listen to what the father of church history had to say. Eusebius was called the father of church history because he actually was one of the first writers about church history. And he records what Polycarp had to say. You'll find this in the Ante-Nicene Fathers, Volume 8, page 773, if you're interested. Polycrates wrote this. As for us, now remember, he lived in the late 100s. In the late 100s. He may have written this somewhere therefore around 197 or something. As for us, then, we scrupulously observe the exact day, neither adding nor taking away. For in Asia, and that would have been Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey, great luminaries, those are great lights, have gone to their rest, who shall rise again in the day of the coming of the Lord. It's kind of interesting. He didn't say, like I hear some preachers say, they've gone on to be with the Lord. They're in heaven right now, walking the streets of gold. And Polycrates was the chief apostle after Polycarp had died. And Polycarp was the chief apostle after John had died. And he replaced James. Peter never was. But they have gone to their rest, who shall rise again in the day of the coming of the Lord. I speak of Philip, one of the 12 apostles. John, he was one of the 12, moreover, who reclined on the Lord's bosom. Then there is, and that just meant, that was an idiom that meant that he sat very close to Jesus. They always, when they gathered around the table, John was always there with Jesus. He was the youngest. They let him sit right beside Jesus. He probably insisted on it. They let him because he was a very young fellow. He might have been 13 years old. I speak of Philip and then John. Then there is Polycarp. This is Polycrates now, who replaced Polycarp. Then there is Polycarp, both bishop and martyr at Smyrna. And then he continued to mention other people's names, whose names you would not know. He mentioned a few of them that you might know. Sagarius, maybe Papirius, maybe Melito, you might know his name. But he mentioned all these names. And then he said, listen to this. This list of names, John, Polycarp, Polycrates, and all these others, these all kept the Passover, not Easter. They all kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month. Now, that's, everybody knows, everybody agrees, Catholics and Protestants, Jews agree. The first month here is the month of Abib, later called Nisan, the first spring month. And they counted the 14th day from the new moon, because each of God's months begin with the new moon. These all kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month in accordance with the gospel. So if you follow the New Testament, as I do, then you want to be in accordance with the gospel, which means you keep Passover. Now that's what Polycrates said. If you want to be in accord with the gospel, you need to keep the Passover. Notice he didn't mention Easter. Easter was not kept by the early New Testament church. In accordance with the gospel without ever deviating from it. They always kept the 14th, but keeping to the rule of faith. And that's found in the Ante-Nicene Fathers, Volume 8. I've got them, I own them. I bought them years ago. All the volumes of the Ante-Nicene Fathers. Ante is A-N-T-E. It means before, not anti, but anti. Ante-Nicene means before the Nicene Council in the 300s. So these are letters, I mean, huge, like I said, multiple volumes of letters, which even Protestants agree are accurate. They go back before the Nicene Council under Constantine in 325. And so this is found in volume 8, pages 773 to 774, if you care to look it up. I didn't make this up. And I don't know if you can find this on the internet, but you could probably, I don't know if you go to the library, they probably wouldn't have. If you went to a local seminary, they'd have the Ante-Nicene Fathers. Look it up. Notice that the true church of God kept Passover Are you going to be keeping Passover? Now, I don't know who all you are who are watching this. Some of you may be Methodist, Baptist, Seventh-day Adventist, Seventh-day Baptist, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, all of whom are Protestant, and no Protestant church on earth that I've ever heard keeps the Passover. The early New Testament church did keep the Passover, but Catholics didn't, and Protestants are the daughter churches of Rome, and they have never kept Passover. But the early church did. Now, by the way, does this mean that we go out and we kill a lamb? Is that how they did it? They said they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month. There are only two things they could have done. Number one, they could not have killed the lamb, because that can only be done in Jerusalem at the temple. And when Polycrates, I get these two sometimes confused, but Polycrates wrote this long after the temple had been destroyed in AD 70. Long after that had been destroyed. So how did they do it? They did it two ways. Number one, they ate the true lamb. They took the bread and the wine. Jesus said, "This is my body, this is my blood." You know that. And you remember how John the Baptist said, "Behold," pointing to Jesus, the Lamb of God. So they ate the lamb, except it was the true Lamb of God, by taking communion, symbolically, eating the true lamb. The second way they observed the 14th, they put the leavening out of the house. Let me read you one more thing and then we'll conclude. Polycrates also wrote this: "Moreover, I also, Polycrates, who am the least of you all, in accordance with the traditions of my relatives, 7 of whom were bishops, and I'm the 8th, and my relatives always observed the day when the people put away the leavening." Now remember, Polycrates, the very name sounds Greek. He's not a Jew, he's a Gentile. And he said, "Now we Christians, following the tradition of Polycarp," and I'll be back to John, and John gets it, of course, from the law of God, and following the example of Jesus Christ, he said, "We always observe the day when the people put away the leavening." Now, we believe the new moon will be seen on March 30th that night, making March 31st the first day of God's calendar year, Abib 1st, New Year's Day on God's calendar, not Jewish. Their New Year's in the autumn, that's different. But God's New Year's in the spring. And that would make April 12th, I believe it is, I think. We'll let you know. We'll give you, if you watch us every Saturday at 10:30 Eastern Time, we'll let you know exactly what night it will be. I think it's a Saturday night, I believe. It's a Saturday night, and we'll be taking communion. We'll be doing it here. We'll be broadcasting it. Now, if you live in a part of the world where the sun hasn't set yet, it'll be archived, and when the sun sets for you, you can actually watch our service and be a part of it. As we partake of this annual observance, communion was not something Jesus ordained for you to do every Sunday or 4 times a year, or some churches do it once a month. No, the early church did it every year on the Passover without ever deviating to the rule of faith. And that's what we're going to be doing here. I know Protestant churches don't do it, but the early church did observe the Passover. So be with us. Also, this coming Saturday, and the following Saturday, I'm going to be concluding our, this Saturday, I'll be concluding Gospel of John. Then after that, I'll be going through some answering your questions about Passover and explaining it to you, and explaining how Jesus is our Passover. So be with us this coming Saturday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Tell your friends where to watch.